Welcome back to another episode of the Remade Life podcast. In this episode, I'm giving you a 6-month update on my medication-free life. 6 months already, time is flying by. I'll be sharing what I have done in the last 6 months to address symptoms and stay medication-free. I'm Coach Danny. Let's talk about it. Are you ready to rewrite your story and embrace a new perspective on healing autoimmune disease? Hey, I'm Daniela Spear, and I'm fascinated by exploring the human body, movement, and how emotions help to create our life's journey. After a transforming experience helped me to heal over 15 years of autoimmune symptoms, I decided to share what it looks like to have a second chance at a more compassionate relationship with my body. In this podcast, I will guide you in building lasting wellness by tapping into your body's innate wisdom, understanding the emotional roots of autoimmune disease, and how to use strength training not just for working out, but as a tool to heal from within. So get ready to revive your most inner joys, rebuild your health, and reclaim your life. This is the Remade Life podcast. Hello. Today I'm giving a 6-month update on my medication-free life. When I first came off of medication, I made a promise to myself to document this whole process, even if that was just marking the big milestones. And I'm officially at 6 months. Well, 6 months and a couple of weeks. So what have I been doing? Well, glad you asked. I've been living my life. So on January 3rd, which was like the official 6-month mark, I didn't even think about it until the end of the day. And when I realized it, I thought that was really cool, that I'd been so focused on my life and school and relationships that I almost forgot that it was like the official 6-month mark. And because I remember back in October when I had hit the 3-month mark, like I was counting down those days. But now 3 months after that, at the 6-month mark, like, oh my gosh, it's just becoming not like an afterthought, but it's just not as big a part of my life. And I certainly don't want to forget this feeling and the journey that it took me to get here to be medication free. But I also kind of love that I was just living my life and wasn't really focused on medication at all. And to me, it's kind of wild to think about something that I was so dependent on at one point, and now it's just not really even a factor anymore. Like just a year ago, being medication free became an idea. Maybe it wasn't even a year ago, because I think it was the idea to get off of medication came to me after my liver specialist dismissed me from his care. And I think that was like in February 2023. So like almost a year that this idea came to me to talk with my rheumatologist about getting off of medication. And if you're interested in listening to the whole story of how I got off medication, I share all of that in my 3-month update. And that was episode 4 from October 15th. So I will link that episode in the show notes. I think that was like 100 days of being medication free. So what have I been up to since then? Okay, so quite a bit. When I shared the 3-month update, I shared that I'd been experiencing some esophageal inflammation, like this really intense heartburn thing that was a combination of my esophagus flaring up, so inflammation in my esophagus, and this like costovertebral joint disjunction. And the two were sort of feeding off of each other. And the pain was definitely a 10 out of 10. And I would feel like I was having a heart attack. I could barely move. I remember I would have to kind of lay on my side with this ball under me just so that I could take a breath. It was really intense. I have had a significant decrease in those. In fact, up until just this week, I'd only had an esophageal flare up once, and that I think was at the end of October. So that was maybe like 2 weeks after I shared the episode on like my 3-month update. And since then, I hadn't had any. So it's been like almost 3 months since I had a flare up of my esophagus. And I wish I could say that I haven't had any at all, but that's not true. I mean, technically, it was after the 6-month mark. So I had an esophageal flare up like this past week. And so technically it was after the 6-month mark, but I think like a 3-month span of not having any was really great. And the fact that I didn't really have any esophageal flare ups through the holidays with like all the craziness of like holiday foods. But I think it finally did catch up to me, and I had one this past week. However, I would say it was like a 10, or not a 10, but a 7 out of 10. So it was a lot longer since I'd had one, whereas before I'd been having one like once a month. And so a 3-month span is a huge win. And the intensity was a lot less, like significantly less. So I definitely think that my esophagus is getting more resilient to inflammation and to the foods that I'm eating, which is a huge win. So I think that my body is adapting to not being on medication, and this is evidence of that. So good job. Oh, and this time the esophageal inflammation was not paired with the costovertebral joint disjunction. So I think like that's getting better too. And that has been more attributed to just like my movement practice in general. So a couple of wins right off the bat. I've also had way less pain in my hands and fingers. Disclaimer, this past week was just rough. Okay. I think I'll share about that in a little bit, but since the 3-month update, I have had significantly less hand joint pain. So when I started tapering off medication, and when I initially first got off medication, like my hands were hurting like once a week. Like at the end of the week, or just like a really long day, I would always get some hand joint pain. But in the last 3 months, I've had significantly less. I've also been sleeping better. Like, of course, I think sleep is the thing that can always use improvement. So I'm maybe not like better, because I think I was like really sleeping well when I gave the 3-month update. So I should say I've been sleeping fairly consistent. It was a little touch and go there around the holidays, but I think that's the case for everyone. And I'm still in massage therapy school. So in November, we started doing our clinical hours. So now we're like massaging real people. Not that we weren't before. It's just that we had been doing a lot of massage exchanges like within our class, like with our classmates. And now we are doing clinical hours that's open to the public. So I've been getting a lot of real world experience in massage school, and I was worried about my like hands and wrists and arms, but I've been doing a lot better than I expected. I've been really focusing on my posture and just like the mechanics of my body when doing massage therapy. And I wish that you could see me right now, because I'm kind of like rocking back and forth as if you could see me, but that is how I practice massage therapy. I try to use my legs, my whole body, and that is what we learn in school, so that we don't fatigue quickly and that we can protect our like smaller tools like our hands and fingers, right? And what else has happened since then? Oh, in November, I competed in a deadlift competition. So I think when I shared the 3-month update, I was training for this competition. And then at the beginning of November, I competed. I did not hit my final lift. So I did 3 attempts, 185 pounds, 215 pounds, and then I went for the 230 pounds. I think my initial goal was 225, but I was feeling really good, so I said, you know what, let's go for it. However, that day ended up just being really long. There was a lot of athletes, and I think by the time I got to my 3rd lift, I just was empty. So I did get it off the ground, the 230. I got it off the ground, but I didn't lift it up all the way. So technically it didn't count as a lift. So even with that, I believe I got 3rd place. They only gave awards to 1st and 2nd, but I was a pretty close 3rd place. And that was with a 215 lift. I missed my 3rd lift, so not bad. And then the holidays. So the holidays started, right? Thanksgiving. Not gonna lie, this past holiday season was a bit rocky. There was a lot of emotional things just happening around the holidays that made them tough, but it actually helped me to do some reflecting on my emotions and how I self-validate. I do believe that self-validation is, or at least learning to self-validate, is a really important part of the healing journey. So it did help me to do some self-reflecting through the holidays, and as well as have some tough but necessary conversations with people that I love. So it was just, I don't know, like it was a different vibe this holiday season, and I don't think it was just me. I kind of have been getting that from a lot of people, that this past holiday season was just not the like usual cheeriness. But I don't know. I did hear that Mercury was in retrograde, and I know it feels like Mercury is in retrograde like all the time, or we hear that all the time. Please don't ask me astrology questions. I'm not 100% sure on what that all means. But I do know that it can cause some chaos, right? And maybe that was it. Maybe we just blame it on Mercury, or maybe we just say that it was a weird holiday season. I don't know. And I got sick at the beginning of December, and it was my first time being sick since being off medication. So part of me was a little freaking out. Part of me was like, let's just see what my body does. So I kind of approached it with some curiosity over how my body would respond. So I tried to like let the fever do its thing, and I did. But I think after like the 2nd day of having fever, I was like, this isn't fun anymore. So I did take some Tylenol at the end of that day, because I just didn't feel like the fever was getting any better. And I was just like tired of like having chills and like just not feeling well. And I feel like probably an hour or so after I took the Tylenol, like I started to just sweat. So my body temperature was like regulating. And then after like the fever subsided, then came like the stuffy nose and the like sneezing. And then I had a cough for like a month, and it felt like forever before it went away. Yeah, that was my first experience getting sick. And that brings us to like this month, to January. It's flying by already, and we're like going into what, like the 3rd, 4th week of January? I don't even know. And this past week, I got sick again. So I mentioned this earlier, but I did have the esophageal flare-up this past week. As I said, it'd been 3 months since the last one, so definitely a lot of improvement as far as like time-wise. It's not happening as frequently, which like kind of reminds me of how I used to approach managing flare-ups, the autoimmune flare-ups. This was, back in the day when I would have frequent flare-ups. My goal was just to lengthen the time between flare-ups, and that was like one of my first goals. So if you're in that place where you're like currently experiencing high autoimmune activity, like make that your goal first, to sort of just not completely get rid of flare-ups, because I'll tell you what, I'm off medication and like it can still happen, right? And I think a better goal is to aim to just lengthen the time between them, so decrease the frequency. So that's kind of what's happening here with the esophageal inflammation. And I want to assume that my esophagus is getting a bit stronger and more resilient to inflammation. But to be fair, I was at my nephew's birthday party last weekend. We did like a taekwondo birthday party, and there was like cake and pizza. And then like the next day at my parents, I had like coffee, which is a definite trigger, I'm realizing, because every time that I've had this like esophagus inflammation is always followed me having some coffee. So I'm not surprised that this happened. And as I mentioned, that this time around, not only was it like 3 months since the last one, but the intensity of it was way less. And then I also had a fever this week, and I don't know if I like picked up some like children germs from the from the taekwondo place, but I don't know what it was, but it was like very mild, and it was gone in about 36 hours, so 1.5 days, and it wasn't as intense as the last fever. It was only like around like 100. I kind of stayed around like 100 degrees, so it wasn't like a super intense fever. It was kind of mild and short-lived, and I haven't had any other symptoms since then. Like I don't have the stuffy nose, the coughing, kind of like the congestion after that. So I don't know, whatever it was kind of came and went quickly. I'm also just gonna choose to believe that my body took care of what it needed to take care of, because my body's also getting stronger off of medication on its own. So good job, Daniela's body. Okay, whoop whoop. Please celebrate with me. And so this week I also had some hand joint pain. I told you it was a rough week, but to be fair, I'm also like in like week 4 of my menstrual cycle, the luteal phase. Ladies, if you for those of you who experience a menstrual cycle, like that this week is rough, right? Just it's chaos. My hands were hurting for several days, which was like the longest pain streak that I've had in a while, and definitely since I started the process of getting off medication. So over the past year, when I've had joint pain, it usually went away within 1 to 2 days. But this was like a whole week, and mentally I sort of started to spiral. I was like, what if I'm wrong? Like, what if my perspective on autoimmune disease is all wrong, and it wasn't just an immune response, but what if it really was this disease that acted on its own and I couldn't do anything about it? What if I have to go back on medication because my hands were swollen and hurting, and on and on and on? My mind was spiraling, and it makes sense. What the mind experiences, the body experiences, and vice versa. In this case, what the body experiences, the mind experiences also. And I've just been having a lot of inner turmoil this week, and I'm at a point where schoolwork and clinicals and my clients and like work is just picking up. And as I mentioned, I'm in my luteal phase of my menstrual cycle, so like naturally I was feeling overwhelmed, and you cannot be held accountable for the thoughts that you have during your luteal week. And I know you know what I'm talking about, right? So this morning, when I like got up, I was supposed to like get up and work out, but I had zero motivation. And instead, after some like self-talk and convincing, I did a restorative bodywork session for my upper body. So while I was freaking out, like I did also know that if my hands have been hurting, it's because inflammation is accumulating there. And if it's accumulating, it's because something or somewhere higher up in the body, there's probably some kind of blockage or tension that is keeping lymph fluid from moving well and clearing inflammation. So I just went back to what I know, and I decided to practice what I teach. I did some self-cupping around my clavicle to open up lymphatic flow back to my heart. And immediately, like, you could see my skin getting red, and I could feel the space opening up and new blood just rushing to the area. And I like didn't realize like how tense that area was until I was like kind of like cupping and massaging through that area. I also just, with some of my recovery tools, I rolled out my lats. I used my yoga tune-up balls at my upper traps, and I massaged my neck and my shoulders. I did a massage around my armpit. Then I like used my hands to do a self lymphatic massage around my neck, my chest, and armpit area. So I did a lot of body work to open up my upper body, and I kid you not, within like 30 minutes, just 30 minutes, my hands were feeling so much better, like 90% better, like almost immediately. Like 30 minutes is a very short amount of time. And then I just like vacuumed the house. I vacuumed the living room, the kitchen, like essentially pain free. And like while I'm recording this to you, this is just like a couple hours later, like they're like 95% better. And I still have a little bit of tenderness in my wrist, but like what a huge difference from when I woke up this morning, where I was like, my mind was spiraling out of control because my hands were like hurting so much, to like being reminded like, wow, this stuff works. And like I'm sharing this with you all in real time. Like imagine if you could resolve your joint pain in just 30 minutes. Well, you can. You can, when you learn the techniques to support your body's natural healing processes, right? And when I think about the body's natural healing processes, like two questions come up for me. One, why did I wait all week to finally do a restorative body work session? Well, like I said, I'd been sick, I had a fever, I'd been tired, and again, I was on my luteal phase. Like, honestly, I don't think the best, like the week prior to getting my menstrual cycle. And the second question is, if this is a body's natural healing processes, why do we need to support it? Like, why doesn't it just work on its own, right? Because we live in a world that doesn't really support natural healing. And it's not that the world doesn't support it, but it's just that the nature of our lives and our society, like we're overstimulated. We eat heavily processed foods, just like processed foods are all around us. And yes, even the health experts do it when it's their nephew's birthday, and life just happens, right? So there's just a lot of things that work against the body's natural healing. So we have to do our part to support those systems that are already in place and are already working for us. And I have to tell you, this morning I was doubting all of it. Everything that I share about healing, emotions, the nervous system, restorative body work, I was like, what if none of this is actually true? And you know what? I really think God gave me some grace this morning and reminded me that this is all true. Like, He gave me an opportunity to practice what I teach and to experience it like I was experiencing it for the first time. And which is silly because, like, you know, when I work with clients with restorative bodywork sessions, like, I am always so amazed at how quickly the body responds. And, you know, I got to experience that with my body, like, all over again. Because I think, like, over, like, the past 2 years that I've been, like, really diving into a lot of healing work, I think that the healing process has become, like, normal. Not that it's normal. I mean, it should be normal because that is what the body does. But, like, just experiencing it has become normal, that, like, in the times where I have done some body work in the past to alleviate my achy hands, like, I expected those responses. But, like, I don't know, something was different about this week. And having my own restorative bodywork session this morning was just such a cool reminder, and, like, really cool to, like, almost be in awe of my body all over again. And it was just really cool to see that the body does heal, that the body was created to heal. And we have to do our part too in supporting that process. And I don't ever love being sick. I don't ever love experiencing pain, but like I do think that this week was just a really good reminder of like, hey, don't sit on this message. Don't get comfortable with the message. And it's, while it can be normal to you, like it's not normal to everyone else. And I feel like this morning I got to just experience it, like I said, what felt like for the first time all over again. And I thought that was pretty cool. So restorative body work, it works, my friends, okay? It works almost as fast as medicine, and dare I say, even better than medicine. So how am I doing 6 months medication free? Well, I'm still learning and still believing that the body can heal itself. And the symptoms that we experience, like those are the whispers, sometimes the screams from the body to get our attention, to bring you back to yourself, to get you to check in when life around you is getting wild. And like the body doesn't do things without purpose, not even the fever or the hand joint pain. There's purpose in all of it, and that is to heal. And that's the only thing the body knows how to do. Its only job is to heal, even when it doesn't look like it, especially when it doesn't feel like it. It's all an attempt of the body to heal itself. And the question is, are you with it, or are you getting in its way? Good question to think on. So, as promised, I wanted to share what I've done in the last 6 months to stay medication free. And the biggest thing is being focused on living my medication-free life. I competed in a weightlifting competition. We got a brand new couch over the holidays, and it was just like delivered a couple weeks ago. And I also bought some new workout clothes from this brand I love. And you might be thinking, like, what does that have to do with like being medication-free? Well, first, like these are all things that I envisioned for myself, that I envisioned for my medication-free self. And I am creating evidence that my medication-free life does exist. And I think that it's really easy to like look beyond those things, like to like just forget, right? To forget that these like day-to-day things like aren't day-to-day things. Like these choices that I've made for my life, the things that I have chosen to focus on, are because this is the life that I envisioned being medication free. And I remember when I started my like healing journey, when I started unpacking all those emotions, and the one thing that I felt like I could do to create this like healed life was paint my house. So I remember my husband came home and I was like, we're painting the whole house, because it was like this gray color. It made me sad. I wanted like a warmer, cozier color. And I just wanted to create this environment of feeling comfortable in my own space. And we painted the whole house. And like that, again, you might be thinking like, what does that have to do with healing? But taking steps to create the life that you envision outside of autoimmune disease, outside of medication, and affirming that evidence is part of staying medication free, right? You're creating the evidence of saying, look, it is possible for me to be medication free, and you're continuing to affirm that for yourself. So I think that has been like the biggest thing. I've continued to do lymphatic work. I started tongue scraping. So this was something that I learned in my Ayurvedic medicine class at school. I'm not 100% sure if it has a significant impact, but I kind of like it. So I just do it in the mornings after I brush my teeth. I just scrape my tongue, and sometimes it looks gross. Sometimes it looks clear. I don't know. I'm going to choose to believe that I'm clearing out all the toxins that my body detoxes overnight. I've been drinking my morning water. just to optimize my hydration, movement, and strength training. My strength training has been a little touch and go since my competition in December. It's not been as frequent, but still consistent. So I've been kind of staying at 2 to 3 times a week. And then I've also been doing some nervous system regulation. And then, of course, sleep. Sleep is a work in progress, but I'm continuing to make that a priority, making sure that we get into bed at a reasonable time, and just always trying to focus in on sleep. And then something that I was just very firmly reminded about this week is just check back in with my nutrition. Got a little rampant over the holidays and with birthday parties, but that's what the holidays are for, right? And just you enjoy the heck out of them and then refocus on the food that is nourishing for both your body and mind. So no special tips or tricks here or supplements, just good old-fashioned supporting my body's healing system. So I've been focusing in on the lymphatic system, the nervous system with some nervous regulation practices, and my digestive system with hydration and some whole foods, right? All of these systems influence the immune system. So that is how I'm supporting my body, is by supporting all the systems that influence the immune system. And that's what I plan to keep on doing for the next 6 months and beyond that, because the more that I do this, the more I realize this is actually just a part of taking care of my body in a society that isn't necessarily built for self-care. And the more that I take care of my body, the more that my body's going to take care of me, right? And it's part of having that relationship with your body. So I feel I would be incredibly selfish not to share these practices with the world. So if you are curious about supporting your body's healing systems to help you heal any autoimmune or chronic symptoms that you're currently experiencing, I invite you to schedule a restorative bodywork session. It's a one-on-one session where we work together to identify those sticking points in your body. We use movement as a tool to release long-held tension and restore the healing in your body. So schedule your restorative bodywork session at the link provided in the show notes. And if you have any questions about restorative bodywork, on healing autoimmune disease, or getting off of medication, reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Daniela.Spear, or send me an email, hello@remadewellness.com. And until next time, my friends, be well.